to Storytime with Captain Xavier. I'm Chaylo, and I play Captain Xavier in various forms. And today we're going to go through another one of the many stories I have from playing that character. We're going to be talking about the time that Captain Xavier nearly slit a man's throat for smoking a cigar. That was the one you guys voted on, which is a great choice. The backstory of this particular event was that I had gone away for the summer to visit my father along with my brothers and sisters, and since I had absolutely nothing to do where my father was, I decided to volunteer at the Bristol Ren Fair in Kenosha, Wisconsin. For those of you who are from that area, you're probably familiar with it. If not, you should look into it. It's awesome. And I signed up to work with the Guild of St. Michael, which is their military group. They do their muskets and their pike stuff, and just march around looking awesome and do all sorts of things with that. That is where I learned to do the pike and musket stuff that I then brought back with me, taught to my men, and that's what we do at the Ren fairs that we work at. And it was a wonderful time. I had an absolute blast the entire summer. None of them actually did combat of any kind. They were all actors. None of them did any fencing, none of them did any SCA, none of them even did any boffer combat, really. And so the fact that I did all of that was kind of an anomaly and was interesting. I also brought with me a couple of other interesting skills, and I brought the tools and the materials to do them. On the first day of the fair, they have a big sit down. They get us all together and say, okay, we're looking for ideas for demonstrations that we can do in camp. They did a couple of shows every day. They did a weapons of war show where they showed off all the different weapons and armor and how the weapons defeated armor and so on and so forth, how armor defeated weapons and whatnot. And they also did a barber surgery show where they demonstrated how the various wounds that were caused by those weapons were treated back in those relatively primitive times. But they were looking for more ideas. They also did a musket firing, and they did, like I said, marching in formation, and they did a kiddie pike drill where kids could sign up and learn how to march with pikes. But they were looking for more ideas, because the more the merrier. It was a huge fair. They had thousands of, like 10,000 people a day come through the fair. And so they needed more entertainment. And I said, hey, I know how to make gunpowder, traditional gunpowder, Blackpowder, and I have all of the tools and materials with me. I brought them in case it came up. And I'm like, that's awesome, you start tomorrow. So after the afternoon musket firing for the Queen, we did a big musket firing for the Queen when she processed by. I then went back to the powder magazine and made gunpowder. Demonstration on how it was made, the materials, the history, and then I made gunpowder from scratch using saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, and ground it up, mixed it up, wet it, dried it, ground it up again, and then tested it. And I didn't test very much of it, just enough to demonstrate that no, really, it works. I know what I'm doing, and it was fun. A lot of people, really like the educational aspect of it, as opposed to just the flashy firing and all that. And over the course of however many weeks, I think I was there for like 9 weeks, I amassed a fair amount of black powder. And I just had it in a tray, just sitting there on the table, a silver plate that I was just piling it up on. And one day, I'm doing my usual spiel. Didn't have a particularly large crowd that afternoon. I think it was the day that it was like 106. Nobody showed up to the fair that day. So there were a couple of people off in the distance, and then there were 2 young boys. They were brothers, couldn't have been 7 and 9 maybe, right on the edge of where I'm working. Just their little noses peeking over, watching me do this, and the mother in the background kind of going, do I really want them to know how to do this? And I'm going through my spiel, and I've got the gunpowder, and I've made it, and I'm moving stuff around. And somebody approaches, and there was a pillar blocking my vision of them, so I couldn't actually see them clearly as I'm working on stuff. And I look up, and there's this man with a lit cigar, 6 inches from probably about a half a pound of gunpowder on a plate, 6 inches from the faces of 2 little boys. And before I could even say anything, our commanding officer, who was Sir Robert Carey, who was just a little further ways down the railing from me, showing some guy a crossbow, rushes forward and says, "Sir, that's not safe. This is live powder. You need to move." And the guy's response was, "Well, I didn't even think about it," and takes another drag and backs up. And I take a moment to compose myself, and I go back to my demonstration. And afterwards, the captain came up to me, because I wasn't a captain at this fair. Sir Robert Carey was the captain of the militia. I was just some schmuck, which was really cool. But he came up to me and said, "I didn't even see the man at first. Apparently he felt a disturbance in the force. Basically looked over and saw my body language, said he saw the expression on my face and knew something was wrong, and since I was looking at the man, he assumed it was at that man. And he said, you were going to kill that man, weren't you?" And I told him honestly, if he had touched off that powder because of his own stupidity, of his own disgusting habit, if he touched off that powder and hurt those 2 boys, because at that range, if they were lucky, they would have only been blinded. If they were unlucky, it might have killed them. I told him, yeah, I'd have gone over the counter and I'd have slit his throat, quite probably, before even realizing what I was doing. You know, I draw a very hard line on the hurting of children, so, yeah. Now, being a bunch of actors, being basically a theater troupe, by the end of the day, the story was that I'd been halfway over the counter with my knife drawn before the captain had been able to stop me, and, I just let people go ahead and keep telling that version of the story. It was much more interesting than the facts. Alright, what a miss. There it is. There's always another screw. Lovely. I didn't have quite as many failures with tier at WVZ as I had at Afterworlds, but I did have a catastrophic one during the last stand, unfortunately. Blew the flywheel off. Gotta figure out how to get that to quit happening. Need to talk to Out of Darts. I've tried gluing it. I think I need to make a slight adjustment to a spacer that he gave me, because I think the spacer is actually too big. Anyway, yeah, that was the story of how I nearly slit a man's throat for smoking a cigar. And, yeah, I stand by it. But, who knows what would have actually happened. Probably would have rushed to help the boys. But, you know, you gotta keep the actors scared. Anyway, you guys get to vote on the next story. The runner-up was the time Captain Xavier conquered an entire duchy by himself, so that's option 1. Option 2 is going to be the cake incident that resulted in Captain Xavier having his own action figure. Or the third option, the time a young deaf boy taught Captain Xavier, and thus the entire Empire of Adria, the true meaning of chivalry. So I will have the link to the survey down in the description. You guys can pick which one you want to hear next. The runner-up will carry on to the next week, or the next month. And, yeah. Let me know what you think of this format. Some people said they preferred the minifigures. And if there are stories that really lend themselves to the minifigure format, I'll go back to that. But I'm enjoying the talking while I'm working on things that I don't actually feel like doing whole videos on. Like repairing Tyr. Failed me. Actually, he didn't fail me. He performed magnificently. And there will be video of it. Anyway, there you go. That's the story. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. Thank you for watching.